guys. Welcome back to another edition of Texans Unfiltered, a Houston football podcast for your Houston Texans. And today's a bit of a unplanned stream. I know you guys are used to me streaming more often during the week. I've kind of dropped that recently with some of the things going on. But today there was some news on the timeline on Twitter that broke that I feel like has to be talked about. And luckily it came from somebody who I love, I trust, I consider a friend. A lot of people you guys see come on the show, I don't consider a friend. I can consider them acquaintances, but Big Sarge Sports, I do consider a friend. Big Sarge Sports is a guy that, had me on his radio show early on when I was doing Texans Unfiltered more, had me on his podcast, always talks to me. Never above anybody, has this ability to just be a genuine person every day. And we were talking on the timeline. Everybody was talking. And Big Sarge said this. This was in reference to me saying that I don't believe I believe that the Texans have identified one quarterback, as I believe most teams do, right? They have one guy. They believe this guy is the guy. And I can't see them just taking a quarterback to take a quarterback. Well, Sarge chimed in. They may have a preference based off of personality traits, but they have identified that they can't go wrong with either. So the Texans will be taking a quarterback at 2. Any talks that I've had about Will Anderson or trading back, no matter what I think of this quarterback class, it really doesn't matter what my thoughts are on the quarterback class. Make sure you guys follow Big Sarge Sports on Twitter as well. By the way, it's at Big Sarge Sports with a Z, not an S. But the Texans are going to take a quarterback at 2. They are comfortable with either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. I don't think it's shocking to anybody. I tend to think a lot differently than other individuals, and it's not a contrarian perspective. I have a different view. I've had a different view of a lot of things my entire life. It's not always right. I just don't see things the way everybody else see things. And, it's probably why, even though I stream a lot, I only have 2,000 subscribers. It's because I don't go with the flow. I really try to form my own opinions and look at how other things have been done in the past and what I think could be best for the team. I don't necessarily agree that a quarterback at this stage would be the most beneficial for this team, but, I also see the argument as to why. Mainly, and I said this during Sean, you hired a defensive-minded head coach. The best thing you can do is set that defensive-minded head coach up with success by drafting a generational pass rusher like Will Anderson. He had one at the Niners. He had one when he was a player here with the Texans, J.J. Watt. I honestly believe that if they wanted to go quarterback at 2, the best thing they could have done was hire an offensive-minded coach that can get the most out of the quarterback. Of course, the OC, Bobby Slowick, and everybody else on the offensive staff can do that. But, history shows that that's not always the best method. Typically, you want the offensive-minded head coach to be the guy when you take a quarterback to pair with. We saw it last year in the playoffs. 7 out of the 8 teams that made the playoffs had offensive-minded head coaches with young quarterbacks. But that doesn't mean that this can't work, and I believe that it can work. I just don't believe either of these quarterbacks are truly worth taking at 1 or 2. And that's all it boils down to. My film evaluation doesn't really matter. What I see in a player doesn't really matter. Ultimately, what matters is what's being thought and said and presented at NRG by the scouting team and the coaching staff. And it looks like that's what they're doing. And they believe that CJ Stroud or Bryce Young will be the quarterback of the future. And again, I understand the side of the argument for a quarterback. I totally do. And I do agree that it is the most important position in the NFL. But I do think that teams have shown over the last couple of years that you don't necessarily need to have a Patrick Mahomes to be able to compete in the NFL. I do believe that you can be competitive and potentially go where you want to go without having that level of quarterback. Now we are in the AFC, so you do need that type of quarterback, I guess, to an extent. And that's something I've always kind of thought. So I don't believe Bryce Young or CJ Stroud are on that tier of quarterbacks. So if you're drafting a quarterback at 2, I feel like that quarterback has to have the potential to reach those heights. Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, all of the guys that we already know. I don't believe either one of them are. I think the only one that has a chance is Anthony Richardson, but that's based on film and potential. It's not based on what we've seen in college. So I can understand why you wouldn't want to invest a second round or a second overall pick in Anthony Richardson. But at the same time, Nick scouts. Nick played quarterback. Nick understands the quarterback position. Look, no matter what you think of Davis Mills as a quarterback, Nick hit on that. Nick hit on Davis Mills. There's really nothing you can say. You can't debate it. He's going to be a backup in this league for an extremely long time. Davis Mills was a hit in the 3rd round. So I have to trust Nick's evaluation that either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud will likely be a hit as well. The history of the number 2 pick at quarterback, it doesn't, the odds are not in the Texans' favor. But that doesn't mean that the pick at 1 could, like the way we look at this, pick 1 could be not the Texans guy, right? Let's say it's CJ Stroud. Well, I believe Nick has Bryce Young as his number 1 quarterback. I've believed that the entire time. I think the size thing is hard. I think he had to probably sell himself on the size. I don't think it was just this unanimous Bryce Young boom. I do believe that he had concerns about his size. I think everybody did. There's nothing wrong with that. You've just never seen it. Doesn't mean that he won't be successful. Doesn't mean that he won't be able to stay healthy. But it's a concern. You haven't seen it, so we don't know. Especially with his frame. It's not even just his size, it's his frame. But I do believe when it comes to the quarterback position, Nick does value the mental processing and decision making and this cerebral approach at the quarterback position. I honestly believe that. And I think Nick's going to get his guy. I don't think the Panthers will take Bryce Young. I think they will take CJ Stroud. And the Texans will have Bryce Young. So honestly, it doesn't matter who they take, because I do believe Bryce Young is the number 1 quarterback on their board. And so, that's a plus for the Texans. But the fact that it's reported now that the Texans are comfortable with taking either CJ Stroud or Bryce Young puts to rest any other conversation that's been had at 2. The Texans will be taking a quarterback at 2. And Big Sarge Sports, he put it out. And Sarge will be on the show next week. I texted him this morning. So we will definitely talk about that. But yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know this is it's a done deal. You guys in the quarterback, crowd that are super excited. You guys have a month to be super excited about it, and we just have to hope that Nick Caserio and the Texans coaching staff and scouting team got it right when it comes to the quarterback, and kind of go from there. I do think that Bryce Young will have an immediate impact on this team. I really do. I think that team is going to be successful with Bryce Young. I don't see it being any other way. Sorry, somebody's at my door, which is weird. But yeah, so just want to come on, let you guys know something that did happen. Props to Big Sarge for coming out and saying it. I appreciate it, because all the effort and time I've put into my thoughts with the other perspective doesn't matter anymore. So there's no reason for me to even think about it. But yeah, I hope you guys also checked out the interview with Sean Pendergast and everything else that I did yesterday. Great conversation with Sean. I love having that kind of conversation, very organic. But yeah, so I hope all of you have a great weekend. I hope you guys all go out and celebrate that Bryce Young or CJ Stroud will be your quarterback at 2. Either way, the future is bright for the Texans to grab a quarterback, and the future is bright with how things are going anyway. So no reason to be upset. We're all wrong at some point in our life. I was wrong that I didn't think that they'd take a quarterback. And I understand why. I do understand why. And it kind of is what it is at this point. So, all right, with that being said, I'm Young Ari Gold. I'll sign off for Texans Unfiltered today. I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. It's supposed to be great weather. The sun should be out. You guys go outside, grab some vitamin D, enjoy time with the family. And I will see you guys next week.